Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. You know the feeling you have after some momentous, life-changing event? The birth of a child or a funeral or some unexpected medical diagnosis. Those are the moments that define your life, of course. And so you wake up the next morning and you realize nothing will ever be the same. Well, that was definitely not the feeling you probably had this morning. They impeached the president last night and, if we're being honest, didn't really make any difference. Despite weeks of loud and urgent noises gleefully amplified by the mouth breathers on cable television, the votes last night came and went, and then, drumroll please, nothing changed. We didn't learn anything. Nobody grew. Democrats seemed almost theatrically insincere when they began this process some weeks ago, and then by yesterday, they were every bit as fraudulent.
I solemnly and sadly open the debate on the impeachment of the President of the United States.
It's with profound sadness that I stand here today in support of these articles of impeachment.
I'm saddened that we're here today.
I come to impeachment with deep sadness.
I rise on a sad day for America, a sad day for Texas, and a very sad day for the people I represent.
This is a sad day for our country and for our democracy.
This is indeed a sad day for our country.
This is a very sad day.
Madam Speaker, this is a sad day in U.S. history.
I have to say that this is a sad day.
This is a sad day. It is not a day of joy.
Now, you can mock the mindless conformity of what you just saw, but honestly, you've got to admire the discipline that a moment like that must have required. These are people, by and large, with disorganized and chaotic personal lives. That's why they're leftists in the first place, because they're deeply unhappy. They don't make their beds, they hate their dads. But when it comes to political talking points, suddenly they're Germanic in their efficiency. For a moment last night, though, the mask slipped. When the impeachment resolution finally passed, onlookers began to cheer. Pelosi had to remind them to shut up.
The yeas are 230. The nays are 197. Present is 1. Article 1 is adopted.
Yeah. Ixnay on the earring chay. The Washington Post had trouble with that message, too. They just couldn't keep a straight face. After last night's vote went through, the newspaper's congressional reporting team, air quotes around all of that, went out to dinner to celebrate what they called Merry Impeachmas. It's the one holiday they celebrate. The Post tweeted about it, but later deleted the tweet. Apparently, it wasn't solemn enough. Pelosi's orders. By this morning, though, the embargo on authentic emotion had finally ended. The mission had been accomplished, and Democrats were finally allowed to break character and be themselves, if only briefly. So they were. Actually, they conceded impeachment was awesome. Pelosi herself set the new tone. Watch.
We've been hearing from people all over the country since last night and this morning. Seems like people have a spring in their steps.
Wow. So that's not what we were told, but, you know, things change. It turns out impeachment isn't a sad event. It's not solemn. No. It's a piñata party. It's a cause for celebration. And by the way, don't worry. It was never about saving the republic or preserving the Constitution or any of that heavy stuff we told you before. Those long speeches about the framers? Just kidding, say Democrats. Impeachment was never about removing the president. No. It was always just a prank. It was the political equivalent of a flaming bag of dog bombs on the country's front steps. We made our point, Democrats are saying. We don't need to continue. Seriously, that's what they're saying. That's the new talking point. It's hard to believe, but the tape doesn't lie. Senior Democrats are now telling us they may not even pass articles of impeachment on to the Senate. In fact, no less a figure than House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn is urging Democrats, brace yourselves, to let impeachment die. Watch this.
Are you suggesting it's possible you will never transmit the articles of impeachment?
If it were me, yes, that's what I'm saying. I have no idea what the Speaker will do. But if you have a preordained outcome that's negative to your actions, why walk into it? I'd much rather not take that chance.
Huh. So after 3 years of nonstop screeching about the moral necessity of impeachment, and by the way, the left specializes in screeching about moral necessities, but now they're telling us they don't really want impeachment. Are you confused? Well, that's only because you don't think like a leftist. To interpret what's actually happening in Washington, we're joined by a legitimate expert on the ways of the city, someone who has learned this through suffering. Jeff Sessions spent decades in the United States Senate before becoming the country's Attorney General. He's now running for Senate once again from the state of Alabama, from which he joins us tonight. Senator, thanks so much for coming on. What do you make of this? Why are Democrats suddenly telling us, after all these years, that they don't want to pass the articles on to the Senate?
One reason may well be, Tucker, that they can imagine what it's going to be like on the floor of the Senate. I remember when the Clinton impeachment went forward and I was in the Senate, Lindsey Graham was a congressman and one of the presenters, the managers of the case. They laid out, based on a record in the House, a detailed prosecution, basically, of 3 separate felonies that Clinton had committed. And I believe they proved it beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. And I just can't imagine what would happen when you end up with one of these vague charges like abuse of power or obstruction of justice. Could even be laughable. If they were going to back off, it would have been so much better for America had they done it before they voted this impeachment. That does damage to our country to weaken the moral authority and the constitutional requirements of impeachment.
Well, and it's also confusing as heck, if I can say, and bizarre. So they spend 3 years shouting about this. We go through the whole rigmarole of passing these charges, in effect, and now they're telling us that they don't want to press them. So why did they do that? Wouldn't it just been easier just to keep screeching and not go through the process of impeachment?
Absolutely. I thought they might even do that. It came clear to me, and the articles of impeachment themselves prove there's not a basis for an impeachment here. It's just an absolute abuse. And why they didn't stop before they voted this way, I cannot imagine. Now they made it even worse by voting impeachment and now losing their nerve when they have to present the weak case.
So you are running for Senate in Alabama, but as noted, you spent literally decades in the Senate. You know virtually everyone in it. So with the deep knowledge you have of the body, tell us how likely you think it is that if these charges make it to the Senate, the president will be convicted and removed.
I think it's zero chance. It's so easy for Republicans to prove and establish, and they will in their speeches and in the record they produce, that this is not a justifiable impeachment. The American people need to fully understand this is not a justifiable impeachment. Yeah. Abuse of power because the president made me angry is not a basis for impeachment.
No, it's not. Being angry is not a high crime or misdemeanor. So I have to ask you, since you were one of the early and persistent voices on trade in the Republican Party, a lone voice a lot of the time. The USMCA passes the House, the trade deal with Canada and Mexico. Is it a good deal for the United States?
It's so much better than NAFTA. And I traveled with President Trump all over this country, and I saw him hammer NAFTA. You remember he said it was the worst trade deal in history. Yeah. He can't believe that they negotiated such an abomination. And now he alone had the courage to take it on. Nobody else was saying that. And he's pushed it through Congress. It's a great victory for him. He did the right thing for America. It wouldn't have happened had he not led. And the Democrats trying to claim some credit, okay. But he got it done, and it's clearly better for America than the old NAFTA agreement.
Well, that assessment carries some weight coming from you. Senator Sessions, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you. Congressman Mike Johnson represents Shreveport, Louisiana, North Louisiana. He joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks so much for coming on.
Delighted to be with you.
So you're right in the middle of it as a serving member of the House of Representatives. Now Democrats are telling us, just kidding. What was this about?
unbelievable. I mean, they were breathless with this sense of urgency.
Yes.
Remember, the reason that they brought Article 2 of the impeachment articles was they said he was obstructing Congress. Well, what did that mean? He didn't willingly give you all of the direct communications we had with high-ranking consultants in the White House. That's what every administration's done. They said, oh, but we can't go to a court like everyone's done before because we have to get this done right now. Donald Trump is an existential threat to the Republic. He's a threat to the Constitution. They were just saying this like 48 hours ago. And now suddenly, oh, well, we're just going to hold it in abeyance now. We'll just see what happens. We'll see what develops. I mean, it's comedy.
So do they have a plan? I mean, it's confusing for those of us on the outside looking in. Yes. You're thinking maybe we're giving them too much credit for. I mean, are they dumb? There must be some plan, right?
Can I tell you the insider view? No, they have no plan. They've been making this up as they've gone along. It began with the engineered special secret, top secret hearings that Adam Schiff had in the basement, yes. And then they changed their theory of impeachment about 6 times. They're literally making this up as they go. And I think Pelosi, someone gave the analogy today, she's pulled the pin out of a grenade. She's holding it in her hand. She doesn't know what to do with it right now. If she lobs it over the wall, McConnell's ready for that. The president's ready. He wants to go to trial. They've created for themselves a real mess, and I think it's political malpractice.
Which sounds like they've hit a brick. And by the way, it couldn't happen to better people or be more deserved in my view. What do you think's likely to happen?
It's a very good question. I know what will happen in the meantime is the country will be further divided. I mean, this is why the Founding Fathers warned us. They feared a single-party impeachment. They said, don't go down that road because you're going to divide the public perhaps irreparably, and that's what we have right now. And they should have never done this. It's a single-party impeachment, and it is completely evidence-free. I mean, there is no merit whatsoever to either of these 2 articles, and it's going to be so easy for the Senate to bat it down. I think they should have some trial, but we may not get the chance because Pelosi may never send it over.
So you think that's a possibility?
I really do.
But this might be the end of impeachment. It would be kind of half an impeachment.
I think anything's possible at this point. We've learned not to be surprised anymore with the Democrats in charge. It does say in the resolution, importantly, it charges the Democrats in Congress of exhibiting the articles in the Senate. Now, it doesn't say a time limit. It doesn't say when. But their presumption would be that they'd run it right over there. Remember, they were so urgent about this. That's not happening. So we'll see what develops.
It is just the weirdest thing I think I've ever seen.
It is.
Congressman Mike Johnson, great to see you tonight. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Tucker.
You confirmed a lot of our suspicions.
Sadly.
Hard to believe they're true.
Yes.
Well, throughout the impeachment process, the party that pushes to keep abortion legal until the moment of birth said it was necessary. All of this was being done on behalf of, wait for it, the children.
I could not look my granddaughter or any member of future generations in the eye, having condoned actions that undermine our democratic system.
I have 2 grandchildren, and they'll want to know what I did to stop him.
And our grandchildren will be left with what we did here today.
I will tell my grandson that I stood up for our democracy.
That is my duty as a mother.
When her future children learn about President Trump's impeachment, they may ask, Mommy, what did Grandma do? I want my daughter to be able to tell her children, Grandma did the right thing, because in America, no one is above the law.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, Sean Davis co-founded The Federalist. Of course, he did it for his children and his grandchildren because nobody is above the law. And that's why he's joining us tonight. Sean Davis, drowning in a torrent of cliches. It is great to see you tonight. So this was done for the children. If you were to rank the various explanations we've heard for impeachment, founding fathers, bribery for the children, which is the most compelling, would you say?
Oh, gosh, I don't think there has been a compelling one. The whole do it for the kids nonsense. It didn't work out. Oh, Trump's a traitor. He committed treason. He bribed. He extorted. None of that worked. So they just ended up with, oh, yeah, he was mean to future generations of kids, which is a laugh riot coming from a party that believes in unlimited taxpayer-funded abortion up to the moment of birth, and a party that has been a big part of building up $23 trillion in our national debt that those kids are going to have to pay. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't buy it.
Yeah, well, exactly. So apparently, just moments ago, Amy Klobuchar, senator running for president, kind of a nice person, I think, maybe not the brightest, but she described this as a, quote, global Watergate. I think that's the phrase, global Watergate. Without the context, do you have any clue? Would you dare to guess what that means?
I have no idea. I'm a little worried for the staffer that probably wrote that for that he or she's going to get brutalized afterward because it doesn't make any sense to me.
And apologies if I'm getting the second hand through an earpiece, but apologies if I have that wrong. I mean, look, it's It's no dumber. I'm hearing it's definitely right. A global Watergate. It's no dumber than any other explanation. So my instinct is that the Democrats have walked into a kind of man trap of their own making. This is going to hurt them. Is that wishful thinking?
No, it's been such a debacle. It's like watching a bunch of monkeys try to hump a doorknob. I have no clue what they're doing right now. They have said it was an urgent threat to remove this president. We have to get rid of him. And then all this culminates.
I'm trying to get that. Please take that back. I want that image out of my head. Sorry. Excuse me. I want to say I'm sorry to our viewers because that will haunt a lot of them, including me. Anyway, I beg your pardon. Keep going.
This whole thing culminated after we were told that there's this urgent threat and them doing exactly nothing and holding the impeachment articles over through the new year. So all their rhetoric has been absolute nonsense. It's been bad faith from the beginning. And they're in such a mess that I don't know how they get themselves out of it at this point.
Well, I kind of agree. And maybe it seems like the problem is nobody's in charge. I mean, you have Pelosi, who's clearly no genius, but she does understand politics. And I think she does have grandchildren in real life, and she wants the country to continue. She's on the one side. And then you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's like an open bigot nihilist who's got no kids and doesn't care at all about the country, and she's pushing in another direction. So maybe that nobody's running the thing.
Well, I almost feel bad for Pelosi because I don't think she's an idiot. I think politically she knows what she's doing, and she basically got bullied into this by her own caucus. She was trying to avoid it for years, even though Dems wanted this from the beginning, and I think she finally lost control. And I think it's the squad and the most deranged and delusional of the left-wing base that's calling the shots here, and it's why it's become such a mess for them.
Man. So the president, last question, is saying that he would like a trial ASAP. As just a pure political matter, and that seems like a fair thing to ask for, but as a political matter, what do you think helps the president more?
That's a tough question. If I were the one being charged, I would want a full trial. I would want the facts to come out, and I'd want it to be shown that I didn't do anything wrong. But I get that the Senate doesn't want to go down that road. They don't want to repeat what the House has done and waste all this time on something that nobody cares about and isn't going to happen. So I get his frustration, but I see why the Senate is doing what it's doing.
Yeah, and it's just, it's not like there's nothing else going on in the world. We're in trouble, and we need to address it. Sean, great to see you tonight, and thank you on behalf of the children for what you've said.
Thank you, Tucker.